Hey Reddit, if someone says, "Tell me a joke," what joke do you tell them? I was addicted to soap once. Now I'm clean. No, I hate jokes. I always punch up the line. What is white and disturbs dinner? An avalanche. There were 3 medieval kingdoms on the shores of a lake. There was an island in the middle of the lake, over which the kingdoms had been fighting for years. Finally, the 3 kings decided that they would send their knights out to do battle, and the winner would take the island. The night before the battle, the knights and their squires pitched camp and readied themselves for the fight. The first kingdom had 12 knights, and each knight had 5 squires, all of whom were busily polishing armor, brushing horses, and cooking food. The second kingdom had 20 knights, and each knight had 10 squires. Everyone at that camp was also busy preparing for battle. At the camp of the third kingdom, there was only 1 knight, with his squire. This squire took a large pot and hung it from a looped rope in a tall tree. He busied himself preparing the meal, while the knight polished his own armor. When the hour of the battle came, the 3 kingdoms sent their squires out to fight. This was too trivial a matter for the knights to join in. The battle raged, and when the dust had cleared, the only person left was the lone squire from the third kingdom, having defeated the squires from the other 2 kingdoms, thus proving that the squire of the high pot and noose is equal to the sum of the squires of the other 2 sides. A slice of pie is $1.60 in the Bahamas and $1.30 in Jamaica. Those are the pie rates of the Caribbean. 3 vampires walk into a bar. First vampire goes up to the counter, says, "I would like a cup of blood." Second vampire goes up to the counter, says, "I would like a cup of blood." Third goes up, says, "I would like a cup of hot water." Bartender says, "Hey, aren't you a vampire?" Vampire pulls out a used tampon and responds, "I like tea." A man and his wife are in the kitchen. The husband doing dishes, the wife writing a letter on the kitchen table. The wife looks up and asks her husband, "How do you spell pedophile?" The husband replies, "Gee, honey, that's an awful big word for a 12-year-old. Have you heard of the new sushi bar that caters exclusively to lawyers? It's called Sosumi. I have a great knock-knock joke, but you have to start it. Why did the woman fall into the well? Because she couldn't see that well. Why was the stadium hot after the game? Because all the fans have left. A software engineer, a hardware engineer and their project manager were out for lunch one day and decided to take a walk down on the beach. They saw something shiny in the sand and pulled it out, and it was a lamp. A genie comes out of the lamp and says, "Thank you for freeing me. As there are 3 of you, I shall give you each 1 wish." Software engineer says, "I want a mansion staffed with beautiful women who will wait on my every word and $1 billion so I'll never have to work again." Genie nods his head and says, "It is done." And the software engineer disappears. Genie turns to the hardware engineer and says, "And you?" Hardware engineer says, "I want a huge 200-foot yacht with a beautiful all-female crew and more money than I'd ever know what to do with, so I can just sail around the world for the rest of my life." Genie nods his head and says, "It is done." And the hardware engineer disappears. Genie turns to the project manager and asks, "And what do you want?" Project manager says, "I want both of them back after lunch." What's the difference between a light bulb and a pregnant woman? You can unscrew a light bulb. What's the difference between a dirty bench on the side of the road and a lobster with breast implants? One is a crusty bus station. The other is a crustacean. A Texan dies and goes to hell. The devil puts him to work digging holes in the hottest part of hell. After a couple weeks, the devil checks on him, expecting the Texan to be begging to stop, that it's too hot. But instead the Texan is just digging along, singing a song. The devil is like, WTF? The Texan says it's not that hot. It's like Texas in June. The devil thinks a minute, then turns the thermostat way up. He checks in the Texan. Sure, he will be sweating and panting and begging, but he is still digging like it's no big deal. Texas in July. The Texan days with a shrug. The devil turns the thermostat all the way up, but the Texan keeps working. August heat. Just like home. He says. The devil is pissed. He thinks about it for a minute, then has an idea. He turns the thermostat all the way down. The devil knows this will work because everyone knows Texans don't know what to do with ice and snow. This is true. Except for parts of the panhandle. We are hopeless when faced with true cold. He goes back to the Texan, only to find him yelling and jumping and just having a good old time. Hell has frozen over, yells the Texan. The Rangers won the pennant. The Rangers won the pennant. I'm holding a fundraiser for people who struggle to reach. Let me know if can't come. What's the difference between a tomato and a chickpea? I didn't pay $200 to have a tomato on my face. What do you call a magic dog? A labracadabrador. 3 engineers are arguing about what kind of engineer God was. The electrical engineer says, God was an electrical engineer. Look at how our brain controls our limbs. Our body is all wires. The mechanical engineer says, God was a mechanical engineer. Look at how the limbs work. The joints, the articulations. Our body is all simple machines. The municipal engineer says, God was a municipal engineer. Look at our reproductive system. Who else would run a sewer line through a playground? What's a pirate's favorite letter? You'd think it's R, but it's actually the C. So a leper walks into a bar. Says to the bartender, I would like a rye and coke. Now, as you can see, I have leprosy. If you would prefer it if I were to leave. Because of your other customers. I understand. And #X200B. The bartender says, nope. You deserve equal treatment. Just like anyone else. Have a seat. I'll bring you your drink. And #X200B. The leper has a seat at the bar. The bartender walks down the bar a ways, bends over and pretends to wipe out a glass, but is trying to hide the fact that he is puking. And #X200B. Bartender pours the drink, brings it to the leper, says, here you go. Enjoy. And #X200B. The leper hangs his head a bit, says to the bartender, I saw you puking down there. I told you I would leave if you wanted. It's okay. And #X200B. The bartender replies, no man. It isn't you. It's just that drunk next to you is using your arm as chip dip. What do you call a deer with no eyes? No idea. Then I follow it up with, what do you call a deer with no eyes and no legs? Still no idea. What's the difference between an oral thermometer and a rectal thermometer? The taste. What do you call a hen staring at some lettuce? A chicken sees a salad. Why do sharks swim in salt water? Because pepper water makes them sneeze. Did you hear about the criminal with a fetish for legal procedures? He got off on a technicality. What if soy milk is just regular milk introducing itself in Spanish? Why can't you tell kleptomaniacs jokes? They take everything. Literally. A cheeseburger walks into a bar and the bartender says, I am sorry, we don't serve food here. In France, the ultimate classic bad joke is, what's green and goes up and down? A pee in an elevator. What do you call a deaf gynecologist? A lip reader. FYI, joke has nothing to do with coronavirus or anything, it's an old joke. 4 guys are talking about what the fastest thing in the world is. First guy says thinking because thoughts are instantaneous. Second guy says blinking because you barely notice it. Third guy says light because when you turn your lights on the room is instantly illuminated. Fourth guy says Mexican food and everyone looks at him. He says, well, the other night I went out for Mexican food and by the time I got home before I could think, blink, or turn on the lights, I my pants. 2 guys are walking down the street. They see a dog licking his balls. First guy says, gee, I wish I could do that. Second guy says he looks mean. You better pet him first. A famous Spanish magician was performing before an audience. The crowd waited in anticipation as he announced his next trick. He would make himself disappear. Slowly. He began to count. 1, 2. He disappeared without a trace. Did you hear about that famous actress who got murdered recently? Reese. Them. Reese Witherspoon? Me. No. With a knife. I put a chameleon on a red. He blushed. Did you hear about the Indian? It was intense. Why do Danish soldiers have barcodes? Greater than, so they can Scandinavian, less than. George Harrison gets pulled over by a police officer. The police officer says, I've received reports that you had pot in the car with you. George then pulls out a flower pot and asks, you mean this? The officer laughs and says, my mistake. What are you growing? And George answers, weed. My go-to joke. What thinks the unthinkable? An Itherberg. My boyfriend broke up with me. So I stole his wheelchair. Guess who came crawling back? What did one tampon say to the other tampon? Nothing. They're both stuck up. How many apples grow on an apple tree? All of them. Why did the baker have brown hands? Because he needed a. Say it out loud, it works. A woman is on trial for beating her husband to death with his guitar collection. The judge asks her, first offender? She replies, no. First a Gibson. Edit. I can't English. I'm sorry, I don't have a mirror. 2 guys walk into a bar. The third one ducks. Please. You're looking at one. A joke. I used to kiss my wife on the lips. But it's all over now. Why did the chicken cross the road? To see an idiot. Knock knock. Who's there? And #X200B. The chicken. A young man is walking through the English countryside. As is common in England. It's been raining on and off all day. As he's passing through a tiny hamlet, he sees an old man sitting on a bench outside a pub. The old man has a bit of string tied to a stick and is dangling it in a puddle. The young man, being a bit worried for the sanity of the older gentleman, asks him. The old man thinks about this for a minute. Then responds, "Why, young man, I'm fishing." Now even more worried. And with the sky looking ready to start another downpour any minute. The young man says, "Let's get you inside and I'll buy you a pint." After getting him settled at the bar with a pint of ale, and wanting to make some conversation, the young man asks, "So how many have you caught in your fishing?" The old man again thinks for a minute before responding, "You're the fourth one today." You know what's not right? Left. Mary had a little lamb, its feet as white as snow. And everywhere that Mary went the lamb was sure to go. She went into a butcher's and came out with some lamb chops. I'd never follow Mary into any kind of shop. Helium walks into a bar. The waiter says, "Get out. We don't serve gases in here." Helium doesn't react. What did the Buddhist monk say to the hot dog vendor? "Make me one with everything." Two cowboys are in a desert. They are both starving to death. Suddenly one of them sees a bacon tree in the distance. They run up to the bacon tree and they both get shot. It wasn't a bacon tree. It was a hambush. A man walked into his house and was delighted when he discovered that someone had stolen all of his lamps. Are you sure? Most of my jokes are so dark they pick cotton. A blindfolded person walked into bar. This one, youtube.com NSFW. What do you call a fake friendship? A palace. What did the Viking say when asked if he drives a Civic? He said, "No. I drive a Fjord." Roses are red. Violets are blue. A face like yours belongs in a zoo. Don't worry though. Not in a cage. But to laugh at you. How do you know your sister's on her period? Because your dad's tastes like blood. Always goes down well at family dinners. The good ol' interrupting cow joke. How do you get a one-armed blonde out of a tree? Depending on who this person is, it's either, why did the ghost cross the road? Because he wanted to be on the other side. Or, there are 10 types of people. Those who know binary system and those who don't. Sometimes I miss the days when I used to be into nostalgia. A man goes into the confession booth and tells the priest, "Father, I am 75 years old and last night I made love to two 20-year-old girls at the same time." The priest says, "When did you last go to confession?" The man says, "I've never been to confession." "Father, I am Jewish." The priest says, "Then why are you telling me?" The man says, "I am telling everybody."